Chophouse Row is a carefully crafted infill project in the heart of the Pike Pine neighborhood of Capitol Hill in Seattle. It is the last phase of a larger block-size redevelopment effort by developer Liz Dunn called the 12th Avenue Marketplace.
There were 6 separate parcels that had sort of a motley collection of old buildings and surface parking lots on them. And so over the last, I guess it's been 16 years, we sort of tackled them one by one.
The Chophouse Row portion includes a mix of loft office space, retail marketplace, public space, and residential penthouses.
There was a bit of a hiatus during the 2008 downturn. We permitted a residential building and we decided to put it on hold because the economy was very weak. When it was time to bring that project back to life in 2012, there had been an underlying neighborhood zoning change that let us do an office project.
Dunn brought on Heartland LLC to help find additional investors for the re-envisioned project.
We recognized coming out of the downturn that there were many relationships in the city of Seattle that were interested in coming back into direct real estate investment. There was folks saying, look, we want to put our money to work in a way that we can see it, touch it, feel it, and it's in our backyard in a way that we are creating an impact.
The design team was a collaboration between 2 Seattle firms.
Liz came to us and said, let's move forward with the last piece of this block, which was the Chophouse Row building. Initially, there was a 1918 auto parts building there that initially was going to be torn down.
The new zoning that allowed for office came with incentives to keep facades and character structures, which led the team to integrate the auto parts building. A new 7-story steel and concrete office tower was built right on top.
Instead of just keeping the facade and building all new structure for both the new and the old building, we kept the old building intact. It allowed us to thread the structure of the steel building through it. So you have the 2 systems. You have the concrete frame supporting itself, but not supporting the building above it. You have the heavy timber supporting floors within the old structure, but then you thread through the steel structure of above.
We had to clip the old building to the new building, but use the new building to help support the old structure.
As a bonus for incorporating the historic auto parts store, the project got an additional floor of development rights where 3 residential lofts were built.
And on top of this heavy steel and concrete office building that goes up to the typical 65-foot height limit, we were able to erect a very lightweight structure out of light steel framing for the residential, which is incredibly profitable space for us and frankly helped to underwrite the rest of the project, which was somewhat challenging from a structural engineering point of view.
An alley was carved out of the original building at the base.
What we decided to do was keep the old building, which was very long and skinny and occupied the north half of the site, in place and literally carve an alley out of it.
It just so happens that the building had a 12-foot bay and a 24-foot bay, and the 12-foot bay aligned with where the alley was, so it worked out really well. You can see the mews sort of as this remnant of the structure of the old building.
The exterior wall is still in place and the purlins are still in place, and that creates the sort of the framework for the alley that people walk down. And what it let us do was create another 100 linear feet of retail storefront.
The pedestrian alley leads to a mid-block plaza, a gathering place that creates more foot traffic, connects Chophouse Row to other 12th Avenue Marketplace properties, and adds another frontage for retailers.
We have a pretty good balance of office, residential, retail, food and beverage, and then all those supporting amenities, doggy daycare, gym, yoga studio, and a co-working space, which is where we're sitting right now, the cloud room, to sort of complete the community and really provide kind of an 18-hour lifestyle.
Small tenants are a big part of the plan.
What a tenant starting a small business probably cares more about is their total monthly rent bill, not what rate they're paying on a per square foot basis. If the space is small enough to bring the monthly rent bill down to something that they can afford, but still big enough for them to be able to launch their business from, they're extremely happy. What's great about that is it helps compensate a landlord like me for providing shared infrastructure, which I often have to do in these projects that have micro retail spaces.
The goal of Chophouse Row was to create the type of street life seen in mature urban environments. Dunn's approach to planning and design has been influenced by her time living in Toronto, Paris, and London.
I've always been a fan of what I call skinny infill development, squeezing as many separate buildings onto one block as you can. And I'm a big believer in just reusing existing structures because they speak to the soul of the neighborhood. People like those blocks better that have retained older buildings on them. Tenants like those buildings better and will pay more on a per square foot basis to be in them. So my entire business is defined by rehab paired up with skinny infill. So I do a combination of both, and sometimes on the same site. So Chophouse Row is an example of both.
The architecture alone attracts people to the site.
It's not that often that you see a new building with its steel frame literally threaded down through the old wood timber building, and it makes for very interesting kind of dramatic architecture. And you know, people are completely charmed by the project, which is great. I mean, they will often say, it feels so European, and that makes me feel really good because that's kind of what we were after.
Curated events add to the culture of the property even more.
The amazing thing about having a private outdoor space in the middle of the complex, basically privately managed public space, is that we can program all kinds of crazy events without needing a permit. It's a way of helping people to discover the project if they haven't been here, and it brings foot traffic through. And it's just a great way to make it a hub of the community.
While there may have been faster, easier ways to go about developing this block, the 15-year master plan that includes Chophouse Row adds a richness to the heart of the neighborhood.
One of the most exciting things about this project is the way that it, in a very patient manner, played to a long-term master plan that had an effect on its block in the neighborhood.
Where most developers would take the whole block, tear it down, and build, for an economy of scale, a new project. This is much more granular and takes an old building and leaves it in place and puts a new building next to it, and that interplay is really wonderful.